Hello, everyone. This is Lee Andrews from Akathame with another Live with Lee. And today we've got Randall, it's okay to call him Randy, Bapst. Did I pronounce that right?
That is correct. Very good.
That is correct. Good, excellent. And he oversees uxstars.com. But Randy's got a very interesting background in how he got to uxstars.com. So I'm going to let Randy introduce himself before we get into a bunch of questions. And before we do that, let's go over some logistics. I'll be fielding questions from YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, post them in your respective areas, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. This is rounding out, this session of Live with Lee is rounding out this week focused on talent that are available in candidates and recruiting and networking. So, Randy, why don't you tell us about yourself, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'll try to keep this short. Like in UX, it's really good to be humble, but you did ask, so I'll tell you where I came from. A long time ago, I started out as an intern at Aetna, and you know,
The insurance company, right?
at Aetna, the insurance company, yeah. And that's part of the reason I can relate so much to interns right now who are struggling to find internships. But we'll lead into that. And I, for a long time, was a strict developer in the IT department. And I kind of felt like I was further down the process where sometimes I would see something and say, the user's not going to like this, and we'd have a problem. But it was like trying to stop a train, and like
Yeah.
it's like, no, hey, we have the release date, just do it. And it kind of drove me nuts because I wanted to say, but that's not a usable thing to do. Um,
And you're a developer. Let's just make sure that we understand that.
yes, at that time I was doing Java J2EE web development, and so I grew to want to have more influence over making sure that the users were actually really happy with the end product. And so I got into another position at the same company where they said, "Hey, Randy, you always, helped out people on our team, no matter what it took. What if you came and worked for us directly as an embedded um, Yoda?" My boss would call me Yoda. That's my title, I guess. So he was. Yes, it was a big company, but I found this awesome little part of it, which was called MSU, Marketing Support Unit. And we were like a family there. And so when people talk about personas in UX, for me, it was people. I mean, like by their first names. If I don't do this system right, they're going to have to work late. If I don't do this system right, somebody in another department's going to be upset with them. If I, it wasn't, they all had roles and whatnot, but like they were my colleagues, so it wasn't hard to have empathy with them when they're like actually a part of my team. And so there, what I liked was the amount of freedom that I had to do things in a way that I knew was best for the team because of my former experience doing development and support type tasks. And so in that role, I was doing, playing the role of a business analyst as well as the designer. I would create their databases. I would do their front end. I would do their back end. I would provide tech support as far as if there was a production person and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't, I'm having this problem and it could hold up, an important case for the company. And then be like, and I'd be like, okay, well, I'll just share screens with them and we'll fix it in like 5 minutes, And so sometimes they pull me in for that. So it's hard for me to limit myself to say, oh, I was this like one role. It was
So it's
very,
interesting. So that shows career progression and career transition within the same company because you were at Aetna for 16 years, right? So as a practitioner, this is really important because people are transitioning now, right? We've got the pandemic. We're still not completely through it, although some areas are certainly opening up more and more, and people are returning to work. But we've got tens of millions of people that are unemployed, and their first question is, how can I find my next gig? How do I market myself, and how do I transition? So you're coming from a development into BA into looks like some product design there, right? Internal product design, and front end and back end development, not just front end development. So let's talk about how this. So you left Aetna after 16 years. While you were there, you held many positions in that time. Talk to me about why you had UX Stars before. Why did you start uxstars.com? And tell us what UX Stars is, and why did you start it when you did, and how has that impacted what you're doing today with that site?
All right. I just need to back up a little bit though.
Okay.
I have had many careers, but at the same point, my career has sort of been on a certain trajectory. I could say that I've always been a user advocate. I mean, it started out when I was doing more like desktop support type roles for neighbors, family, then at college, even my internship at Aetna. And like when you're in that role, like the user has gotten what they've gotten. And I would have to teach them and document and be like, I didn't make this system and I'm sorry that they made it this way. And I'll just do my best to teach you. And so when I was a developer, yeah, I only had so much say over the user experience because of the way that the waterfall approach was being done at that time. Remember, this is, I think that they've moved to more agile now. But in the next role, I had a much broader influence because I wanted to make that as good as I could be for everyone. And so I grew in interest in really focusing on UX because I was trying to think, okay, what's next for me in my career development? And I thought how much more effect I could have for users if I was in a place where I would not necessarily be bogged down with some of the coding changes and things like that. I still love creating, but some of that can be very time consuming. And I wanted to be able to have more influence and more effects for people. And I felt like some people do that, and they do that by being a manager of an area, right? And by having a team under them, and they want to lead them in the right direction. And that's one way to go. I felt that by having more of a say on the user experience, I could contribute a lot more to how users felt about the products they were using than if I also had to code them. And so I started uxstars.com. What I think it was like May or June last year in some form. I was growing interested in possibly branching out to get to be a UX consultant. I had attended some workshops where they were talking about being a freelancer and things like that, and I thought, hey, wouldn't that be great? That's like the favorite part of my job is the UX portion of my job. And what if that could just like be like my job? I still like to be able to create things on my own for like my own purposes, like my website. But as far as my career goes, that's where I wanted to go with it. And so when I created it, I was using it partly as a networking tool. It helps me create value for the type of network that I want to network with. My network is going to be UX folks, right? And so, I looked on LinkedIn. Some people want to call it social listening to be technical. But
Social listening.
social listening is when you look at social media and you're trying to understand how people are doing things, what problems they're having. And so it's a form of UX research, and I could see that people were passing lists around. People were sending job tips to one another. Everyone wanted to talk about the newest tool, the newest approach, fundamentals of UX, this great course that was out. And the thing is that I saw that on social media in general, that like that stuff is like, yeah, and then like it gets buried because of the way that social media feeds work. And so I wanted a home for this stuff so that if I gave somebody like a talk at a developer group and I was talking about here is what UX is and here's some great stuff to get you off on the right foot, I could point them to my website and then they can journey off to like all the great resources that are out there.
Nice. Nice. So you were the gatherer. That when did you launch that site?
I think I probably launched it around June of last year, but I really did a major redesign at the beginning of this year.
So you launched it in June of last year. At the beginning of the year is when you redesigned it. And then a month later, COVID.
Yeah, true. I looked at things like Google Analytics, and that helps me keep track of which pages people are using, right? And so I could see, okay, I had some things already there featuring my peers because I want to help them out, if they need some recognition. The world is a big place full of billions of people. And, if I know some people of talent, I want to help them bubble up so that they can get that recognition. And so I noticed that more and more people were focusing on the spotlight section of my website. And so I said, okay, that tells me that is of a lot of interest to folks right now, so I'll just take it up a notch. And then when I started moving it into more of a database, that on the desktop you can search it like it's a spreadsheet, and doing all kind of things like breaking it up for what folks were looking for. Some people wanted to find a mentor. Some people had their internships taken away from them, like at the
Mm,
last second, right before summer. Come on.
I
And
know.
then other people were looking for jobs. Other people were looking for gigs. And then there was all these other folks that just sort of said, I want to help people review their resumes and portfolios right now. And I said, okay, so like in the world we're finding right now, there's like these pockets of all these resources, and then there's these pockets of all these people with these needs, and sometimes the trick is just like helping the two meet together. And so that is what I feel my role is. I feel like I'm a bridge builder, a connector. I don't want to be the be all end all solution for things, but when there's a need, and then when there's what people need, I want to try to connect the two sides.
Randy, this is an act of love. You're not charging anything for this. Is that
No,
right?
no, I pay for the website out of my own pocket, and
So
things like
companies
that.
can go there and hire people, look for people to hire. Practitioners can go there and look for jobs. Are there people who are actually posting jobs on there as well?
I decided that in my role, for what I could keep up with, it would be better to focus on other aspects than being a job board. What I do is I list some great job boards out there. I didn't feel like
Okay.
I could keep track of every job. Now, what I do on LinkedIn is if somebody says, hey, I've got a great job, and I see that it was posted 3 hours earlier, I'm going to send that into the LinkedIn group for UX stars. The social, like up to the second type stuff, is going to be in the LinkedIn side. I decided instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I said, huh, what's a social media platform I use? It's LinkedIn. I can create a group. I can have my interactive sort of side of things there. And so yeah, I do funnel jobs and tips I hear about there as well. Or sometimes I'll hear about this great like online webinar that's free tonight, and I try to make sure that everybody can take advantage of those events.
Has anybody, so are they connecting on UX Stars? Are people actually sharing job opportunities and other resources? Has anybody gotten a job through UX Stars? Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I have. I can't say that if I know that anybody has gotten a job through it, but people come to me when they do get jobs, and they either tag me or message me, and they say things like, "Just having people like you out there who helped to
Well,
support me when I needed it, and it was really going through this grueling process of all these interviews. It helped me greatly." And so I'm more, qualitative as far as like, okay, I think I made a post one time said I'm more concerned about generating smiles than revenue. Like, this is a form of networking. I don't want to be like, oh, Saintly Randy's helping the world for nothing. But, I try to be, very honest. In the long run, I hope that this form of networking helps leads to opportunities for me as well. But,
it is.
I do enjoy helping people. And there's this whole other part of the website that people don't really quite see is I'm always sending out invites to folks and saying, oh, I see you're having this problem. You're new to UX. You're frustrated about this thing. You're sad about this thing. And then I send them a link to my Calendar. And I say, if you ever feel like you would just like to chat for half an hour or an hour, and I let them pick out the time, and then we just talk. And it's not an interview. It's not me trying to like pull apart something they did. I'm just trying to be like a good listener. And every time we talk, they're always like, "Oh my gosh, I got so much out of that call," and I'm like, "Yeah, awesome." And I'm happy to do it again with them. And it's been rewarding for me too because I've met people around the world that I wouldn't have otherwise, and so I enjoy it.
That's amazing. So before we got on this call, for those obviously who weren't, privy to that, we Randy and I had a conversation because right now I've been asked to go back into recruiting. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm like, no, not yet. It's not the time. Now is the time to help people, and I get the same. I feel the same way, Randy. That this is
Yeah.
just about giving. We'll get back when we need to get back, but it really is about giving. So, where are you finding that candidates are getting their needle stuck the most? Is it their resume? Is it their portfolio? Is it the interview? Where do you think that what are they asking you about the most?
Well, I think there's some people who maybe just got out of college and they're looking for talking with somebody about what's going on in the real world of UX practice and things like that, because they've heard about it that way, so they want to see some perspectives on that. um, a big part, I'm just trying to make sure that there's so many times on the internet where you say something and you feel like you're talking to a void. You send a job application and you feel like you're talking into a void. You know,
Mm,
the value that I'm trying to provide to them is mostly it's like, let's just talk, we'll meet up, we'll get a connection. As far as where they're getting stuck, I mean, I see people who just get rejected time after time, and it's kind of heartbreaking to see them go through that process. They got thicker skin than I do. I give them credit for that. Um,
yeah.
it's really competitive out there, and I've seen that people, were very confident about the whole interview process they gave, and like they're still rejected. The other thing that surprises me is that people with advanced education, I'm talking like just about to graduate with a doctorate or something like that in that relative field, they're also having just like a hard time, like, you know, finding an opportunity for them. And so the world is supposed to see, like, oh, hey, you prepared, you learned these things, you demonstrated what you knew through your degrees or your certificates or whatever. But I still see people who, no matter what, the doors close in their face. And I can't say that I have the answer. I just know that, like, I do tell them, I'm like, the world is like upside down right now. I have felt like there was been an uptick over the past week in job postings.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've definitely increased as far as when I send them into the group, as far as people being like, we're looking for a UX designer, we're looking for a UX researcher. And so makes me feel optimistic there.
Do they ever ask you how to stand out in the crowd amongst all the? Now, imagine that they are going to start feeding those resumes to job openings that are going to be coming out as business starts to pick up. Have they ever asked you, how do I stand out amongst all my competitors?
Well, they ask questions about portfolios or interviews, things like that. And in that case, I say, all right, well, it's my role here. I can't be the expert on everything in the world.
Right.
I like the group UX Research and Strategy. They've got cool stuff out there. And I will point them to say, hey, I took this really nice course on how to do a UX research portfolio. And, I'll point them to all kind of resources to say, I'm not trying to be the pundit. I'm not going to be the person on the panel discussion typically
That's
who's going to
right.
say, I know everything. I but my gosh, I'm connected to so much. I probably spent too much time on LinkedIn trying to like take it all in, and I more often than not can guide somebody to a resource that blows their mind that they didn't ever know existed. And so I sort of see that as sort of my role is to like lead them to the next step. Whether or not I have a particular piece of advice for them, it's more often I'll say, I know this person, I know this group, I know this event that came up, I took this course, I know of this particular webinar. And so, I'm a connector, bridge builder. That's sort of what I do. I
Yeah.
don't try to say I know everything about being hired and making the most money in UX in the world. Um, you know, that's just how I try to chip in.
And I specifically called that out knowing that that's what you were going to say, because I think that this is a great example of knowing what you do, knowing your area of expertise, and being able to articulate why you don't do something else that you might be asked of you. This is happening a lot with user experience candidates, because they're saying that they want a user experience candidate to develop, to do the visual design, to do the architecture, to do the user research, and to do the testing. So that what you just said was a great way, great response of admitting that's not my area of expertise. I am aware of it and I can point you to the right resources, but this is my primary focus. And I think that in and of itself helps people stand out, right?
I, if people were to say, Randy, what is your greatest weakness? I would probably say it's that I'm too humble. But at the same point, it's a strength. It's one of those paradoxes. I think
Well, you're
sometimes
honest.
people, they might think, oh, well, he's not bragging about all this stuff. I don't want them to underestimate me. But that's just who I am. And when you're in UX, you're supposed to be a certain degree of humble because you're trying to look for answers outside of self,
That's
right? You're
right.
trying to think, how can I help others? How do they think? How do they feel? Let me show this to somebody else. And, you know, that's just who I am.
So when you were at that, you moved into that BA role. I'm sorry, refresh my memory. What department was that with? Was that with
I
marketing
was
or
in the
you
marketing support unit, and it was
with
not just a
marketing?
BA role. It was business development, front end. Like I was the web, person. I was creating whole suites of web portals internal to the company that would help certain workflows that had to do with the sales processes.
Nice.
So
Nice.
it wasn't just like, oh, I was, just doing front end or anything like that. I mean, there were COBOL programmers and they helped me get information out of the information warehouse. And there were some business folks and they would help, connect me to other parts of the company. But as far as like being the web guy who would make sure that it was designed and developed and BA'd and whatever, and people, you know, when I was trying to head out, it was very touching that all these folks on my team, I said, I just feel like, I need to do something else here, more true to myself and where I am in my career. And, they were very supportive. They wrote all these testimonials for me that, like, it's almost enough to make you cry.
Oh,
It was very sweet. They're up on my website. Because I was like, I don't like to brag about myself. So if y'all could brag for me, that'd be super. So
that's, you know what? That is a great way of generating references, right? Especially if you've been there for a long time and you're initiating. So another thing that rings true to me in your story is that you are managing your career, right? Your career is other people are not managing your career for you. You are managing your own career. You decided to move from that in-house technology team, to the marketing team to support their digital requirements, which advanced your capabilities. And then a few years later, you decided on your own. You were not asked to leave. Nobody wanted you to leave. On your own, you staged your exit and said, this is why. You prepared, you got references, you just got people to write you references and that would speak about you. And here you are today, not getting anything for all of the time that you put into uxstars.com to make sure that our community remains strong and connected and helping one another. And that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's your
I
career.
am getting something. I'm getting to meet up with all these awesome people around the world, and
You're
like
building your
just
network.
I met up with somebody who had a Zoom graduation last week. Oh my gosh, it was wonderful talk. We had all kind of great stuff to talk about, but I'm like, oh, what's life like in San Francisco? I've got another contact in Australia, and she's decided to create a group called uxrescue.org, and she's trying to help UX folks who are trying to build their portfolios by volunteering. Now it's just amazing that I can meet
It's
people
fulfilling.
all over the world. Yes, it is fulfilling.
It is.
Even if I just talk with them for half an hour or an hour, and then we just touch base every once in a while, it's been really super.
That's wonderful. And so when we are not working, there's a lot of people that aren't working right now. And I mentioned that discussion about the ATS on my site that says, do not spend your time worrying about your resume and ATS, worry about growing your connections. And this is exactly what you're offering. So whoever's watching, please do connect on Randy's site, uxstars.com. Now, Randy, you are eventually going to want to get an income and go back to work. What are you looking to do next? What's your next career move?
Sure. I really crave having connections with UXers all over the world and developers. And I want to be the person that they know that they can count on. If something is stumping them, they need some help for getting an outside opinion on what they're doing. I want to be the person that they can trust to work with them for a few days here and there and call in Randy for, the type of services I provide. Whether it's helping to give you some advice on your strategy, helping you to look at a complicated screen that nobody can get right, like no matter how many times, I can help with design on that. And I also love just going through a website and doing the heuristic reviews, UX audits, whatever they call them. And so I just want to be somebody that UXers can lean on around the world to say, hey, we need an outside opinion here because we're all trying to fight against our own biases, our own numbness from seeing our own systems all the time. It even happens if I look at my own website. So that's why I ask other people to look at my website, and I'm always asking for feedback. And so that is sort of my dream, is to just sort of be this global person that people pull in for little bits of time to sort of help out when they need it on their projects.
So are you saying that you wouldn't accept a full-time position
I
somewhere?
of course would accept the right kind of full-time position, but
Just
it
want
would
to be
have to
clear.
be. like I said, I worked at one company for a long time. It would be a company that I'd say, hey, this is going to be like my new home. You know what I mean? Like I don't have the mindset of like if I do pick out a new company, it's going to be very, I want to make sure that the culture is a fit for me, and that it's a place I can settle into.
What kind of brands and companies excite you? Like, what would you like to have in your portfolio? That's really important, right? As anybody who's watching this call who is looking for a job, part of the job search strategy should be what company, what organizations do you want in as part of your work portfolio, your career portfolio? So, Randy, what kind of companies would excite you?
What what kind of companies would excite me?
And
I like companies with a good value. I want to make sure that the company that I work for really isn't just trying to make their customers just like buy their stuff. Or, I want to make sure that the type of UX that I do isn't just truly like, a form of leading the user to buy the most expensive product. I want to make sure that when I do work at a company, that it is geared towards making sure that the people sort of have the promise fulfilled. That if they work with that company, that they'll be treated well, they'll get what they expect. Um, I would want it to be an ethical company. There are certain companies I have in mind, but I'm not limited to them in any way.
you want to
So
stay in the healthcare industry because you were in the healthcare
I
industry.
no, I am not. I'm not. I'm totally not necessarily limited to staying in the healthcare industry. There are plenty of other companies that I work for, and in fact, it's like I worked there so long, I crave some change. That's part of why I like seeing what everybody else is doing around the world. Like this whole past year has been Randy like bursting the bubble on being like, let me out. I want to see what is going on out there. I was a bit,
I get that. I
bubbled in.
totally get
And
that.
so like I'm very curious to see what everybody's doing, and it's like it's invigorating to just check out what's going on everywhere. So for UX stars, I want people to make sure that if you want to see what events are going on, we have a nice new event calendar. I'm trying to do this whole thing where, time zones drive me nuts because you're like, oh, I missed it because that was in British time. So I have a whole section on the website now where I'm trying to build an effort where I have all kind of events there so that people can take up advantage of all these great live things that are going on right now. And there's a bunch of other resources. And if you need UX folks, interns, everybody needs an intern to help them out during the summer, right?
That's right.
We have a lot of great folks who are still out there looking. And so make sure you check out uxstars.com. Everybody's welcome in UX Stars group on LinkedIn. It makes me approve them, but I let everybody in. It's not like some exclusive group. So the more the merrier. And, hope to see you on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Randy. This has been heartwarming, to say the very
Oh,
least.
thank
Thank
you.
you for giving back so much. And I'm honored to be part of your network and that you joined me live today on Live with Lee. And what else is there to say? But thank you so much, everybody. You'll see me here live next week. I'll post the Live with Lee broadcast listing by Monday morning. And everybody have a great day and a great weekend ahead. Take care. Randy,
All
stay on
right.
with
Thanks
me.
for having me. See you online.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.